Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at President Trump's executive order about Guantanamo Bay.
Oh, yeah. This one's definitely causing a stir.
You got that right. It seems like everyone's talking about it. You guys sent us a ton of stuff about it too.
A lot to dig through.
News articles, reports, even some pretty intense social media posts.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of attention, that's for sure.
So, obviously it's a hot topic right now.
Right.
And we're here to break it all down for you figure out what this executive order really means.
Should be interesting.
For sure. Now, when most people hear Guantanamo Bay, they probably think of,
The prison.
the high-security prison for terrorism suspects.
Right.
But it turns out there's actually more to the story than that, right?
Right. There's another side to Guantanamo that most people don't realize.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, alongside the prison, Guantanamo Bay also has a separate migrant detention facility.
Whoa, hold on. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's called the Migrant Operations Center, and it's been used by both Republican and Democratic administrations to detain migrants intercepted at sea
Wow. Since when?
since the mid-1990s.
So this has been going on for decades under the radar.
Pretty much. It's not
Yeah.
something that gets a lot of attention.
That's wild. So this whole executive order isn't about building something new. It's about expanding what's already there.
Exactly. And it adds a whole other layer of complexity to the situation because this facility has been used to detain migrants from all sorts of countries.
Like who?
Haitians, Cubans, you name it. Although, as of February this year, there were only 4 people being held there.
Really? So even while Biden was trying to close the high-security prison,
Yeah.
they were still using this other facility to detain migrants.
It appears so.
Hmm.
It seems like there's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So, okay, let's talk about Trump's executive order specifically. It was signed on January 29th, 2025. What does it actually say?
Basically, it directs the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security to get this migrant facility ready to handle a lot more detainees.
Like how many more?
Up to 30,000.
30,000. That's a massive jump from just 4. And the way he talks about it, calling them the worst criminal illegal aliens, is pretty intense.
Yeah, his language definitely sends a strong message. He even said Guantanamo was a tough place to get out of.
He was very deliberate, like he's trying to make a point.
And the timing is important, too.
Right.
This executive order was signed the same day as the Laken Riley Act.
What's that?
It's an act named after a 22-year-old nursing student who was murdered in 2023 by an undocumented immigrant.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
It was a terrible tragedy, and now this act mandates the detention of any undocumented immigrant charged with theft-related crimes.
So they're using this case to justify sending migrants to Guantanamo.
It's definitely being used to highlight the need for stricter immigration control, and this executive order seems to be part of a larger push in that direction.
Yeah, it seems like there's been a lot of activity on that front lately. Just this past week, we saw 7,300 migrant deportations, Buckley Space Force Base being used for detention. The White House even posted on social media about 969 illegal immigration arrests.
All of this fits into the pattern of Trump's actions during his second term. He ran on a platform of cracking down on immigration and deporting people, and it seems like he's following through on those promises.
But not everyone is happy about it, right?
Not at all. There's been a lot of pushback, especially from human rights organizations.
Like who?
Well, Amnesty International USA, for example, they're really concerned about the potential for indefinite detention and human rights abuses.
I can see why they'd be worried, especially given Guantanamo's history.
Exactly. Daphne Eviatar from Amnesty International even called it a terrible idea.
And she's not the only one. Some people are even comparing it to concentration camps. Anthony Scaramucci, for one.
Yeah, he posted something about that on social media,
Right.
and it's not just Americans who are speaking out. Cuban officials have also condemned the decision.
Oh, really? What are they saying?
President Miguel Diaz-Canel called it an act of brutality, and Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla criticized the U.S. for using a place known for torture centers and indefinite detention.
So this is a pretty big deal internationally, too.
It definitely has global implications. And it forces us to consider the history of Guantanamo Bay itself.
Yeah, Guantanamo has become synonymous with human rights abuses and the excesses of the war on terror. It's not exactly a place with a positive image.
And that's why so many people are concerned about expanding the migrant detention facility there. They worry it will further damage America's reputation and fuel anti-American sentiment around the world.
Especially since Obama and Biden both tried to close the high-security prison but couldn't quite manage it. They were only able to reduce the number of inmates, not shut it down completely.
And all the while, the migrant detention facility continued operating under the radar. It's a complicated situation, for sure.
So we have this facility with a troubled past, and now there's an order to drastically increase the number of migrants being held there. And it's all happening in the context of this larger debate about immigration and America's role in the world.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But that's what we're here for, right?
Absolutely. We're going to keep digging into this and see what else we can uncover.
That's good. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and explore some of the ethical and legal implications of this whole situation.
Looking forward to it.
Picking up where we left off. I mean, this whole thing with Guantanamo is raising a lot of questions about how the U.S. handles immigration.
It really is. And the language being used is part of the problem.
Yeah, like that term criminal illegal aliens in the executive order. What does that even mean? It seems pretty vague.
It is vague, and that's what makes it so dangerous. Criminal can mean anything.
Right. Like, does it mean someone who's committed a serious crime?
Mm.
Or just someone who's been arrested for something minor?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't know where the line is drawn.
Right.
And that leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
And potentially for abuse.
Yeah.
That's a big concern, especially with a place like Guantanamo.
Guantanamo has a history of being shrouded in secrecy. And when you start detaining people there, even if they're accused of crimes, it raises questions about due process.
Like, are these migrants going to have access to lawyers, a chance to defend themselves?
Those are valid concerns, and human rights organizations are definitely worried about that. They're arguing that this sets a dangerous precedent.
It's not just a domestic issue either, right? This is affecting how other countries see the U.S.
Absolutely. Using Guantanamo this way is already damaging America's reputation globally.
Makes us look hypocritical.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we're saying we care about human rights, but then we're turning around and detaining migrants in this controversial facility.
It sends a really scary message to anyone thinking about seeking asylum in the U.S.
Right. Like, even if you make it here, you could still end up detained indefinitely in Guantanamo.
It's almost like a deterrent. Like they're trying to scare people away.
And that feeds into this whole polarized debate we have about immigration. Some people think Trump is doing what's necessary to protect the country.
Secure the border, keep out criminals.
Exactly. But others see it as a completely inhumane and unjust policy.
It's hard to know what to believe, honestly. It's like two completely different realities.
It just shows how important it is to have these conversations, to look at all sides of the issue and not just react emotionally.
Right. We need to be critical thinkers about this.
And we need to consider the practical side of things, too. Like, can Guantanamo even handle 30,000 migrants?
Yeah, that's a huge number. Logistically, it seems like a nightmare.
Think about the resources needed, the infrastructure, the staff. It's a massive undertaking.
And who's going to pay for all of this?
Well, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has said that they're working with Congress to get the funding, but it's not clear if they'll be successful.
And even if they get the money, where are they going to find enough people to staff the facility?
That's another challenge. You'd need guards, medical personnel, translators, lawyers. It's a huge workforce.
Not to mention the logistics of actually getting people to and from Guantanamo. It's not exactly easy to get there.
No, it's not. There are a lot of hurdles to overcome, and so far the administration hasn't really explained how they plan to address these issues.
It seems like they're rushing into this without thinking through the consequences.
And that's always a recipe for disaster, when you let rhetoric and emotions drive policy decisions instead of careful planning and consideration.
Someone's got to be the voice of reason, right?
And we need to remember that we're talking about real people's lives here. This isn't just some abstract political debate.
Every decision impacts real people with families and dreams.
We can't lose sight of that.
So what are the key takeaways from all of this? What should our listeners be thinking about?
Well, first of all, this Guantanamo situation isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a larger trend of the Trump administration tightening immigration controls.
And it's not without its critics.
Definitely. There are a lot of people who are deeply concerned about the ethical and legal implications of this move and about the practical challenges of actually implementing it.
Not to mention the potential long-term consequences for both the migrants and for the U.S. as a whole.
We have to consider all of that. And we have to approach this issue with critical thinking.
Questioning what we're being told and considering different perspectives.
And most importantly, we have to remember the human element.
Right. These are real people whose lives are being affected by these decisions.
So as we move forward, I think it's time to start thinking about some alternatives to this detention and deportation cycle.
Like, what would a more humane and just immigration system look like?
Yeah.
What are some solutions that could actually work?
It's a lot to take in, honestly, this whole Guantanamo thing. It's so complex.
It really is. There's the history, the politics, the ethical concerns. the practical challenges.
It feels like such a huge issue. Like,
Yeah.
what can any one person actually do about it?
I get that. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. But I think it's important to remember that we're not powerless. So you're saying we shouldn't just give up?
Yeah.
That we can actually make a difference?
Exactly. We can't just accept this as the new normal. We have to stay informed and engaged.
Okay, so stay informed, speak up. But what else? What can people actually do to change things?
Well, for one thing, support the organizations that are fighting for migrant rights.
Like who?
Groups like the International Refugee Assistance Project, Amnesty International, the ACLU, they're doing amazing work.
They're the ones on the ground providing legal help and humanitarian aid.
Right. And they're also challenging these harmful policies in court.
So donating to those groups, volunteering our time, even just spreading the word about their work, that can make a difference.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps. And don't underestimate the power of contacting your elected officials.
Oh, yeah. Tell them how we feel about this.
Exactly. Let them know that this issue matters to you, that you're paying attention and holding them accountable.
And, of course, voting in elections is crucial.
It all comes down to the kind of society we want to live in, the values we want to uphold.
Do we want to be a country that turns its back on people in need? That treats immigrants like criminals?
Or do we want to be a nation that embraces compassion and welcomes those seeking a better life?
Those are some big questions.
They are. And the answers will have a huge impact on the future of our country.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in all the negativity, the fear, the rhetoric.
But we can't let that paralyze us. We have to believe that positive change is possible.
And it starts with each of us.
Exactly. With the choices we make, the actions we take, the conversations we have.
So to our listeners out there, don't let this be the end of your engagement with this issue.
Let it be the beginning. Learn more. Get involved. Use your voice to create a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect.
It's a fight worth fighting. And you're not alone in this. We're all in this together.
And remember, even amidst all the challenges, there's always hope.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Guantanamo Bay. We hope you learned something new and maybe even feel inspired to take action.
It's been a great discussion.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep fighting the good fight.